Well, I'm hot. Deal with it.
Do you know what your problem is, Buffy?
You?
Hardly. Your problem is you're spoiled. Maybe the world revolved around you where you used to live, but it's share time now.
Share time, huh? Fine. I'll show you share time.
Hey everybody, Camila here. I just want to say hey and welcome to episode 116 of Revisiting Sunnydale. This is a very special episode. Why? Because we have a very special guest, Dagney Kerr, also known as Buffy's terrible roommate, Kathy. She has graced us with her virtual presence. And yeah, so we're super excited about it. Now, originally, this interview was just going to be part of a normal episode, but we were having so much fun with Dagney, and Dagney was so generous with her time and, you know, the chatting, and it just went on and on and on. And so it was just like, you know, and in a good way. So we had enough to fill an entire episode. So we decided to just go ahead and pluck it out and let it live on its own, let it flourish and blossom as an episode all by itself. So, and we also ended up just talking a really good deal. Like, I mean, of course, obviously, because it's a podcast. Yes, we were talking. So, of course, we talk about Buffy appearances, her Buffy appearance, but we also wanted to touch on things non-Buffy because, you know, I mean, sometimes these Buffy folks may, as you know, cool as they are about answering the questions over and over again, sometimes they get tired of hearing the same old thing. And we wanted to give you some new information that you may not know about Dagney. So we found out a bit more about Dagney, the person, the woman, the artist. So, ladies and gents, please enjoy our conversation with Dagney Kerr. P.S. How boss is that name?
Scene one, Apple, take one.
The whole time I thought you could see me, and I was even doing this.
You were doing this.
The story of my life.
Well, hi, I'm Camila.
I'm Marcella. Hello.
Marcella, nice to meet you, lady.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm so sorry about the back and forth. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen my Twitter account, but like, I think my last response was like 2018. I just never go on.
Yeah,
in fact, I went on recently and liked birthday posts from like 2015. I was like, I appreciate the shout out. I know that was 3 years ago. I'm just like, I don't know, something about that format. Just like when I go on Twitter, I'm just like, oh, it's too much.
It is. It gets to be overwhelming. It's like a lot of people shouting at you at the same time. And
totally. It's like if Instagram, I can handle a little bit more just because it's just like a picture. Mm-hmm. It's not so much like content, and I'm more visual driven. And then Facebook, I'm pretty good at responding on there on my page. So. But anyway, I'm glad this worked out.
Yes, absolutely.
Me too, yes. Thank you so much for joining us.
What's that?
Where are you ladies at?
Pittsburgh.
What part of the country? Oh, you're in Pittsburgh. Oh, okay, cool.
Yep. And
my mom's actually from there.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
And I also noticed that you're from Cincinnati, from Ohio. Yeah. I'm from Toledo, Ohio, originally.
Yes.
So, I mean, we're a little far apart, but still, like the OH10.
Totally. I'm funny when people say, oh, you're from Ohio, cool. And they'll go, where? And they're like, Cleveland. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's sort of like not like really in the same state.
Right,
almost.
exactly. You'd be closer. Like, I'm from Kentucky. Then you'd be like, oh, yeah, we're like.
We share your airport. Yeah. Right. That's so cool.
All right. So we're going to try to do like 15 minutes or so. I don't want to keep too much of your time.
Yeah, it's all good. It's early here, so I'm just getting my day started. So it's all good.
Okay. And speaking of, like, how is your day going?
It's good. It was so funny when I pulled up. So I'm working on a book right now, and it's not a crime book, but part of it was regarding like a cadaver. So literally before this, I was Googling like stages of postmortem. Like I was like, what's a weird thing? Like if someone would look at my Google searches, they'd be like, what is this lady doing? Like, what is a pipe bomb? Like, what the hell?
So
I know, right?
Let's talk about that. Like,
yeah. Let's talk about this book for a minute. That's pretty interesting.
What is this book?
Yeah, it's actually a comedy. Well, it's like a romantic comedy, but it's based on my experience as a juror. I was a juror quite a few years ago, and it's based on that, and it is funny and it's romantic. But there's the part of the trial is about, and it was a real trial about a boy who had passed away from a fentanyl overdose. So it was a really intense experience, but very cool. And so when I was in it, I actually brought my computer with me and was taking notes because I was like, this is just like, wow. And just the experience of being a juror and how people just don't take it seriously and how many people were trying to get out of it was really eye-opening and sad.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, my gosh, if that was me out there, knowing that like people are half asleep and like just trying to figure out, like, let's see, what can I lie about to like get out. Anyway, it was just a really amazing experience. Like all of our jurors, they were very lucky to get the 12 that they had because we were just like the most amazing group of people that bonded and really cared about everything and took our time with it. And it was a really cool experience. So anyway, I've been working on that for a while.
That's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
I have never
Camila, have you ever done jury duty?
I've never even been called up for jury duty.
I've done it once, and it was really, I immediately fell in love with the whole process. It was just fascinating to see. And afterwards, I was out to dinner with my mom and I saw this man and I'm like, why do I know that guy? And it turns out he was the lawyer, the opposing counsel. And I was like, oh, I'm not allowed to talk to him. So I'm just going to keep going.
Exactly.
And the whole thing was really cool.
Was it a criminal trial or was it civil? It was criminal. Gotcha.
And of course they were like, do not Google this man. Don't find out anything about him. And I'm like, oh, the pressure. Yeah, I really want to Google him.
Like that's a lot.
The minute I finished that trial, I was like, like
me too.
And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Really?
Information I'm really glad I didn't know.
Totally.
They're putting a lot on honor system, man.
It seemed criminal, but it was actually a civil case, but it was like a wrongful death case. But yeah, actually I Googled it afterwards and it actually made me feel good about our decision because it's just such a pressure. I mean, we weren't putting anyone in jail, but if you are, my gosh, I don't know. Imagine. It was just really intense.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing that. I wouldn't want to be just because of so much pressure on that, especially if like somebody's life depends on it, like they're going to jail or not. Like I wouldn't. I'm like, I'm really good at this stuff on the movies. Like say like
exactly.
But
I know I would say like I have a couple like trouble like making a decision like on an avocado to pick out at the grocery store. And then when you get it home and it's brown inside, you're like, no, I knew it. Like I'm like I like expected to be responsible for someone's life. Exactly. Like this is too much for me. Yeah. Yeah. But
it's like, I would like to opt out of jury duty because I mean, if you could see the avocados, my history in picking avocados is just way too poor. You do not want me, basically.
We did have one woman who said she could not be a part of the jury. And when they asked her why, she refused to tell them. The judge called her up to the desk. He then cleared the entire courtroom. And when we were allowed back in, she was dismissed. And I thought, I wonder what she said.
Yeah.
She had
got her out of it.
Crazy excuses. One guy said his dog barks.
Wow.
When he's not there, so he can't do it. I was like, wow, really? That's really lame.
Yeah.
That doesn't, my dog will miss me.
One guy actually just said, I think she's guilty about the defendant, like before even trial. And I was just like, so he was just trying to sabotage the whole thing. He goes, she's guilty. I already know it. Like, and I was just like, wow, this is crazy.
Oh,
but anyway.
All right. So, I mean, yes. So again, welcome to Revisiting Sunnydale podcast. Yes. I love the fact that you are, is this the first book that you're writing?
Yeah. It is. I'm a playwright, so I've had a lot of success with my plays.
Mm-hmm.
This particular story, I didn't really set out to write it as a book. It's just there were so many details in my head that was kind of the only format that I felt like I could get it all out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I thought, gosh, if I do like a play, it's like I feel like I'm missing so many like things that are in my head. So I was like, well, let me just try to write it like this, and then it just sort of took on that first person narrative.
And this is like is this your genre? What type of plays do you normally write?
I'd say I describe my work as poignant comedy. So there's always comedy, but then there's always a poignancy. It's usually about our relationships and love and grief and that kind of thing, but mixed with a comedic element. So I was like a flawed character that's trying to deal with something and can't really get past themselves.
Yeah. And those usually make for great stories. I mean, there's a
I think we all can relate to that, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
We're our own worst enemy at times.
So, for sure.
Did you get into acting because of, like, were you a playwright first, or what came first, the acting or the playwriting?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, actually, I started in the business or in the arts just as a young kid in Cincinnati. So I started out doing dancing was actually my first thing. So I started out as a professional dancer since I was really little and was in like a ballet company. And I went to performing arts school from 4th through 12th grade. So that was really where I got it was very intense school. Yeah. Yeah, it was you had to audition every year. You had to audition in every discipline, even if you weren't interested in being, playing the violin. They would make you play an instrument so you understood all the disciplines. Yeah. It was intense. Yeah. Wow. We had random people that went there, like Carmen Electra and Nick Lachey from 98.3. That means some very people I went to school with that are now like pop culture figures. But that was in downtown Cincinnati, and it was an incredible experience. I think if I hadn't gone there, I probably wouldn't even be where I'm at today. It was just very disciplined and taught you to really appreciate other people. It was also a very racially diverse school, and that really was, now I just look back and I was always grateful for it, but I'm really grateful now to just have that experience at such a young age to be part of that community. I mean, everything was always double cast interracially back then, which is really wild to think. They were just very progressive. Right. So if you had, like we did the musical Sound of Music. So we would have one cast would have a Black Maria and a white captain, and then it would flip flop, and they'd have it was just,
that's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And you didn't really think of it as anything unique, but now you look back and you're like, wow, that's really progressive, teaching us that to racially, blind racial casting, and also that anybody can portray a role, even though it's not meant. I don't know. It's just
because I mean, really I'm not trying to put your age on blast or anything, but I'm imagining that you're like around our age. So this is probably like
exactly like it was progressive
80s,
for that
90s.
Time.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, it's not something that that I'm sure was out. And I think that also like Cincinnati has a lot of places are still having problems with racial justice. But I think Cincinnati also had a lot of racial tension at that time as well. And I think the school kind of stood for that. Like our colors were black and white. It was just like a safe space for people to go and just have another experience. Right. Like I lived in the suburbs. And so I had a 16, 18 mile drive to get to that school, and it was inner city school. And I don't know. And just like, and I'm still to this day, I have all my friends from school. They gave us a big sister, like our first day. And my big sister to this day, just Michelle shout. She's like, happy birthday, little sis. I'm like, happy birthday. And I'm just like, I don't know. I know. I feel like I could cry right now. It's like, it's really, So that's where I started out. And, but no, writing was never on my radar. I actually hated writing. I can't say I really love writing still. I love the result of it. But the actual process is, I like how solitary it is in some ways, that you do just, kind of just go into yourself. And it's I think the process of it is sometimes a little bit more satisfying than acting, but it's also very tedious.
Yeah. What pushed you to the other side of it? Like you say you don't really enjoy writing. So what made you be like, all right, I'm going to sit down and do this?
I think I take a lot from the feedback that people get from me, that they enjoy it so much. And so it's not like I feel a responsibility to keep going, but whenever I do put something out there and it gets such a response to people and they are so moved by it, I sort of feel like, okay, well, there's something there that people are enjoying this. Yeah. So let me try to push through how difficult it is and continue to just try to create something that people are moved by. So I think that's a big part of it. And I started out writing probably about 10 years ago, like doing one-person shows and that kind of thing. And, they would always say, create your own work.
Mm-hmm.
So don't wait for other people to give you opportunities. So that's kind of how it started.
Right.
And then it moved to more where I'm not giving myself opportunities, but I'm actually now just writing work for other people to do as well. And I always just get really happy when people say they enjoy anything, even this.
Exactly.
My performance, that's so cool. Thank you.
So speaking
And
of,
sometimes you find the story has to be told. It's just inside of you and it just has to come out.
Totally. It really does. So sometimes it's actually like a medical thing. Out or my anxiety will not relieve itself. So it is absolutely like a purge,
Mm-hmm.
And some stories are that way. And then some stories like with this one, I was like, oh, I know I have to keep going because I gave a few people to read already. And they're like, oh, I love this. Even though I know it needs work. I'm like, all right, then I'll push through it and see what happens.
So, I mean, I know that you've probably been asked like a bajillion and one questions about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is, the reason why you're on the podcast. But I don't want to like keep repeating like these same questions that you've been asked on panels and in interviews and blah, blah, blah and stuff. We are really interested in getting to know who Dagney is. But we obviously have to ask you something about, about your episode.
I don't mind
First of all, like, were you a fan of Buffy before you were cast as Kathy, the annoying roommate?
Yeah. You know what? It's like I have been asked that before and I kind of don't really remember. So I'm thinking like I wasn't like a big fan.
Mm.
I know I had watched a few episodes. I definitely know I wasn't an avid fan of it because I think I would have been a lot more nervous going on to set if I was. And I'm glad I wasn't because I have worked on shows before that I've been a big fan of. And it's surreal because when you see that person, you're like, oh, that's so-and-so and that's Captain. And then it's like, oh no, I'm not supposed to be thinking that way. I'm supposed to be thinking like I'm part of this cast in a story instead of a viewer who's a fan. So no, I had seen a few episodes, but I definitely wasn't tuning in on a regular basis, and so I didn't know who a lot of the characters were, even that I worked with.
Gotcha. So I mean, I know that you did not have any scenes with James Marsters, but you did have a scene with Anthony Stewart Head, who is like...
Yes, I did. And I actually,
at that
James
age, though, you're probably like he's, father material, I guess, at that age. But I don't know. I've always found him to be a striking man. So what is Sir Anthony like?
Definitely. I know. I really had just like that one scene with him. And it's so strange when you do television because you don't really spend a lot of time with people. Your stand-ins go and they do the lighting and everything. You usually do maybe a quick rehearsal. Sometimes you don't even get to say, hi, how are you? It's a little strange. You just stay in your separate trailers and then you show up on set. You just jump right in. Okay, moving on. And then you go your separate ways. Right. So I don't even remember having that much time with him beyond actually just doing the scene. Right. And he was awesome, of course. I just remember thinking like, oh, this guy's such a great actor. And now I wish I had more time to look at him now that you're saying you're so when you're working, you are so focused on trying to put all these pieces together, hit your marks, remember your lines. I remember that particular scene. There were a lot of people in that scene. I do remember there was a few people in that scene and there were, so I didn't really get to spend that much time. I mean, the most time I spent was obviously with Sarah. But even then, we didn't have much downtime to just talk as people. Right. We were both so focused on, okay, what's the next scene? Do you want to run lines or just resting? Right. Especially for someone like her who's on set every single day, 14, 16 hours a day.
Almost every scene.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
How much physicality did you actually have to do, like in the fight scenes and stuff, or was it mostly stunt?
That's what I love. So I've actually talked about this a lot because, so luckily I am a dancer, but this is single-handedly when I was cast. I would say it was the easiest thing I've ever auditioned for to date. Mm-hmm. And it was the least that I was asked about my ability or had to show my ability for showing responsibility.
Oh, wow.
Like I have gone in for something where a commercial where all I had to do was eat a sandwich and I had to do that 10 million ways.
Oh, wow.
I mean, just ridiculousness where you're thinking like, really? Like, don't they know that I can eat a sandwich? Like, I do it every day for, a lot of years. But for Buffy, it was like I went in once, read the one scene where I put up the Celine Dion poster, and then that was it. They didn't ask me anything else.
Really?
They didn't say, hey, are you physically able to do things?
Right. Do you know how to throw a punch?
I was joke like, what if I went on the set and they're like, so you need to punch with your right arm, and I'll be like, oh, this isn't a real arm. I don't have. Like, what if? I don't know. I don't know how they had so much trust, but they just seem to have a lot of trust with seeing things once and going, yeah, cool.
I mean,
let's go with that person.
Had you auditioned with any of those casting directors or anything before?
No, nothing. I went in. It was the casting lady. Joss was sitting there. I didn't even know who he was. He was just a very unassuming, quiet man sitting on the couch. I read it once. He nodded. I left. And then later that night, and I thought I just had one scene. I just thought it was a character that had that one scene. And then I remember when I got the script and I kept looking through it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's more. Oh, I'm in another episode. I have to fight? Oh, wow. So yes, the fighting was hilarious because they just threw me in. They're like, okay, the stunt guy's like, you're going to stand here. You're going to take your left arm. You're going to go left, and then you're going to hook. Then you're going to throw yourself back against the bed. And I just remember thinking, well, they are really lucky that I have control.
Right.
Because it wasn't easy. So I did most of the stuff. There's a part that I always laugh at when I'm dragging Buffy across the room by the legs after I think she breaks through the closet door. And that one you can clearly tell is my stunt double because she has the biggest eyes. Yeah. Like they're so muscular. I always crack up. Like she's like, I'm like, wow, look at those quads. Massive quads. She was really like buff. It was funny to see like a buff version of me.
Of yourself.
She was like I think she said she was a stunt woman for someone on VIP. Do you remember that show?
Wow. Yes.
There was a short-haired lady on that show, and I think she was like the stunt woman. It's like a Pamela Anderson show.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was also on UPN, I think. It was like one of UPN's big hits or something.
Yes. So she did, and then when we fight with each other, I would fight with Sarah's double, obviously for safety. And then not for the smack when I had to smack her, that we did do. Oh, I don't know. I actually don't remember if that was her double. I feel like it's not. I feel like when I had to grab her head, we were actually doing that. Yes, we were, because there was much conversation about safely doing that. Obviously,
do not hurt.
I'm physically putting my hands on her. But everything.
Another thing they probably should have discussed beforehand. Like, are you sure you can do this without hurting?
Check. Like, even like, does this person have a violent back? Like, I don't know.
Like, you want to be the person who comes in, like the guest star who comes in and just like, maims the star of the show.
Like, we should have checked to see if she was really crazy.
Right.
Or just a good actress.
Are you actually...
But that fighting stuff was cool. I mean, you don't normally get to do those kind of things. I say with that role, I look back and it was kind of like a dream thing. Like everything that you would hope to put into one episode,
right.
Comedy, fighting, makeup.
Yeah.
It really was all of it.
Snark.
In one
you got to be sassy. You got to, you play you're just like, and it ends up being like this iconic character, basically. Like, 'cause I mean, it's an important episode. It's really important. You're not just like this throwaway character at all. It's like, this is someone that constantly, that is relevant, especially in the whole Buffy verse.
Definitely. Yeah, I had no idea it was even anything that big, to be honest. And I do remember being in the grocery store before it came out, and I think I was reading like a TV guide or something, and I saw my picture. And I was like, what is this? I was like, oh my gosh, they're announcing me as a roommate. Like, those are the best things, right? When you're not expecting anything.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it was a big deal. I had no idea it would become anything. I didn't know I'd have a little pop, Funko Pop character of me. I mean,
oh, that's so cool. I didn't realize you had one.
I did. It's super cool. It's even got a little egg.
Oh,
An egg that says Kathy. It's I got it last year. I was at a convention in Paris called CloudCon, and there was a gentleman there who made it, and he was selling them, and he had it. And I go, "Is that me?" He's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Can I have it?" I was just joking. He goes, "Yeah." It's very cool.
That is really sweet.
Buffy people are the best.
I mean, it is quite the family, I guess, is the best way to go ahead and put it. And, it's like not, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty other fandoms out there, but I think this is probably my first one where I've been like, because that was definitely my first convention, was a Buffy convention, like way back when, before conventions were like a big deal. Marcella and I went together, and, it's just like, this whole thing. And like, as soon as you find out somebody else is into Buffy, they're like, oh, you're my people. All right, let's talk.
Totally. It's, I've only, I don't go to that many, but when I do, I've been so amazed by and moved by people's experience with the show. I had no idea it was a show that brought, got people through such tough times. I mean, I didn't watch the show enough to know the impact and the power that it had, but I've heard some incredible stories, and to be part of that is incredible.
Yeah. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like I guess Marcella and I were much older when we started watching, so a lot of the things like we were already like past in our lifetime that were expected. But I would say that it was definitely one of the things that strengthened our friendship, because Marcella was my first roommate when I moved here to Pittsburgh, and she introduced Buffy to me. And like, I think it was like on the 3rd season or something when I moved in. And you want to explain to her?
I was like, you're going to watch this show and you're going to love it.
And you will also learn to log your calls.
Did we ever? I don't know if we ever thought about, but like,
no, but we do have the whole thing about where I played that song. I played. Oh my God. I played. This is my first time out of my mom's house, and on my own and blah blah. So I may have abused the freedoms a little much, and I probably played "Livin' La Vida Loca" like more times than any person should have ever.
That is hilarious. That might be worse than the Cher song.
The video, anytime it was on, the video would get turned up. Yep.
That's funny. That was also fun. I do remember when we were filming that episode, in between takes, crew members would always be like, oh, I got to tell you a story. When I was in college, I had this guy that I lived with. He was a nightmare. So everyone was sharing like roommate stories.
Right.
I remember that with me, that like crew members, I'd be at the craft service table just trying to get some, Cheez-Its or something.
Like, I didn't write the episode,
when I was 20? Oh,
Have you had any bad roommate experiences like that?
I mean, you don't have to name names or nothing, but.
Well, no. I haven't. I haven't really had that many bad roommate stories, fortunately. But good. A lot of people have.
Yeah. So
I think everyone can relate to just having, hopefully not, someone hitting them with a phone.
Right.
But, just normal.
Dragging them across the room.
Yeah. Hopefully, my goodness. Yeah.
So to shift gears a little bit, as we were Google stalking you, we noticed that you're a photographer as well.
I am.
And so you have those are some amazing photos that are on your website.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So how did you discover that passion?
Yeah. I think it was a natural progression, and kind of how it started was I had a point and shoot camera, and I little point and shoot pocket camera, and I went to Paris probably it's been a while ago, maybe about 10, 15 years ago. And I was by myself. And I found, it was the first time I've actually taken photos, and I found myself, probably like a lot of people in the world and a lot of artists, there's kind of a lot of stimulus going on in our brains a lot. And I felt like when I looked in the camera, it really calmed me. And I remember feeling so good when I was taking pictures. I was like, oh, I feel so calm just because I'm looking in a lens and everything else was kind of blocked out.
Right.
So it started out just like this almost meditation thing where I would go out and take my little camera and then just feel really good when I came back. And I really like framing things. I think that probably comes from my dance background, just like shapes and knowing like spaces and just how visually things look in the camera. And then that progressed to, I got like a DSLR camera, and then I didn't want to read the manual to learn how to use it. So I took a class so they could tell me the settings. I was like, I do not want to read all those.
The books are extremely thick. I don't know why they...
And small.
Right.
It's exactly like the print is so small, and it just seems more overwhelming than it is. And that's the first time I had a DSLR camera. And when I went to the class, I also found out that you could actually control the look of a photo. I didn't know how you make the background blurry. I just thought it was an accident. I was like, oh, that's so cool. It was blurry. And I was like, oh, you can do that. That's so neat. And that's how it started. And then I studied at a place here in Los Angeles called Los Angeles Center of Photography. And I got really into it. And then I started assisting classes and taking more and more like street photography classes. And then that just became a passion where I would just take my camera out and I'd spend the day just trying to capture moments, which are really fun. And I think that also is kind of like that acting thing where it's like a spontaneous moment you're trying to capture. So it's kind of like that hunt for it. Kind of like when you're doing a scene and you're hoping like, oh, I hope there's that spontaneous, even though we know what we're doing, there's that spontaneous moment that makes us feel alive. And so it's kind of like that with photography. And then that progressed to more doing like portraits. And I love capturing people, and I find people so beautiful, and trying to freeze them in a moment is really beautiful.
I'm also a photographer, and people are my favorite subject. Like I love portraits, and like one of the things that I do here in Pittsburgh is there's a jazz association here called Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, and they 25 years have been like promoting, presenting, and preserving jazz musicians and artistry and all that stuff. And they do this thing every year where they elect like 5 old heads, basically, some like old school jazz musicians and stuff as, the Pittsburgh jazz legends. And I take their portraits for them. And that's,
oh my God, how amazing.
That's like some of the best stuff, like experiences, like for me to sit there with them for like a couple hours, and I talk with them, and, they tell me their stories and whatnot, and I capture their photos. And it's just like so many of them. And, like I said, like a lot of them, because they're jazz legends, they're like, upwards of like 60 plus. And there have been like some really like spectacular stories that I've heard, as well as just like these older man. There's this one gentleman, they call him the Judge, and he was probably like close to 100, and he was just like just so distinguished. Like he was also actually a judge here in Pittsburgh, but just capturing like all of those years of wisdom and everything. And and a lot of them are like, I've never had a photo taken of me that I love this much, and blah, blah, blah. So it's just been like...
that makes you feel so good, right?
Exactly. So it's just like one of those...
You have a couple of self-portraits on your site that are beautiful, by the way. And we were talking earlier about how hard it is to take a self-portrait. So I was just wondering how you managed to capture that energy from yourself, because we're not very good at it.
I'm not so good at working with myself. I am amazing. No, I know it seems so weird, right? I'm really fun to work with. Actually, the movement ones were actually particularly, I have a few of me jumping, and those were really fun to do. I have my remote, and it actually wasn't as hard as I thought, because I think in some ways it's actually easier to know your own timing of when you're going to jump in the air and click the button.
Right.
So those were really fun to try to capture. And yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think Well, first of all, I love that you take those portraits of those jazz musicians. I mean, I can't think of a better subject than that, just because I love photographing older men too. They're kind of my favorite because they just have so much gravitas, and they're just so much their faces and their story and their eyes. I mean, it makes your work a lot easier to do.
And also, like, a lot of times, right? And a lot of times, I find that they're really brought out of their shell with a younger woman paying so much attention to them for 2 hours. So
definitely,
you get a lot of that harmless old guy flirting.
Totally. And they're just, they're pretty easy to not easy to capture, but can you just get them to open up? They're just such good subjects. They just have so much life in them. It makes it really satisfying to capture a nice portrait. And that's so cool that they also felt good about how you did it, because and again, it's very similar, like you said, how did you get into it? It's very similar to acting, where you have a partner, right? When you're taking a photo, is your scene partner, and you try to everybody's different. Some people are shy, some people you have to focus them to stand still, and you just have to figure out ways to do that without making them feel self-conscious.
Right.
But it's the same with acting, you just try to immerse yourself and work with what's in front of you. And if that's not working, you switch tactics until you kind of feel like you're in sync,
right.
That
makes sense.
But yeah. But as far as like self-portraits, they are difficult, and I think it's a little easier when you have a remote versus like a selfie.
Yeah.
Because those never look natural.
I am terrible at selfies.
You're like, hey, and then it's really obvious when you, like, a lot of people, when they do the laughing ones.
Oh God.
You know what I mean? Which I do love a laughing photo, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to make it look like you made yourself laugh. Right. But I think when you have a remote, like when I do it with my Rode, I just keep clicking, and it's not so easy, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite song you put on when you shoot?
No, I really just pay attention more, definitely to the lighting and the setting. I think the mood is very important, and that's like with anything, right? So it's like you just create sort of the mood you want.
Right.
And whether it's kind of a somber mood. Yeah, it's kind of like getting into a character. So if you want it to be bright and pop and happy, you make sure you've got that bright lighting and the right, outfit on that's colorful. If you want it to be more like, I had that one with the black and white with the hat, it's sort of like, I wanted that feel to be kind of European, kind of Parisian, and kind of, so I was by a window, and I just literally would try to sit there and look out the window and get into that character, like, oh, I'm looking out over the Seine in Paris. And then I would just keep clicking my remote until I got one that looked halfway decent.
That's great. Well,
that's the beauty of digital, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
Keep, not like the old days where it's like, well, okay, I probably can do one roll of film.
Right. I've got 24
I took 500
chances.
digital photos to get one good one.
Okay. So you have been most gracious with your time. And before we let you go, we're going to give you like some random questions.
Awesome.
If Marcella, you would like to go on and take that.
Sure. What are you currently reading?
Sadly, not sadly, it's not sad, but I keep reading my own story because I have to go back and read it. I put it on my Kindle. So what I do is I do a draft, I put it on my Kindle, I change the font, and I change the title and change the author name to pretend like I'm reading someone else's book, so I can get that separation. Yeah. It's the only way. And I sit down and read it straight through, and then I make notes, and then I do another draft.
Wow.
So that's what I've been reading, which is it's exhausting. But it's what I have to do because it's really the only way to read it how a person that hopefully will read it, when I finish it, is going to read it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm reading a lot of.
Awesome. Camila, do you want to take the next one?
Oh, you can just go ahead. Oh, okay. What album can you listen to from beginning to end?
Ooh, well, that's a good one. No, I feel sad. I feel like I don't listen to as much music as I used to when I was growing up. Like I just kind of like whatever's on the radio, I'll put it on. What is an album I could listen to? Well, it's funny. I can't really think of an album at the moment, but I teach dance. I do, and so I'm thinking of my playlist. It's so hilarious. One of the places that I teach is at the Koreatown YMCA. I teach seniors, and let me tell you, those seniors get down with Sheila E.
That's
I live a glamorous life,
Yes.
and they're always like, "What is?" I was like, they do like the hand motion, and I'm like, oh, it's glamorous life, and we play drums, like. So anyway, I just like for some reason so I love that era. Anything kind of like Sheila E., Prince, like just that. I love that energy. So even when I'm driving and that song will come on, even though I play it all the time when I teach dance, I just love that era.
Yeah.
So I love anything from kind of that movement, you know.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Just get you going and get your
who doesn't like some glamorous life?
Right.
That's like the best song. Yeah.
So for me, I've really been getting into, with the quarantine and pandemic and everything, I've been really getting into gardening. So my favorite time of the day is between 6:30 and 8. When everything is quiet, I'm checking on my plants. What's your favorite time of day?
Oh, I love that. You know, I like the 6:30 to 8 a.m. Yeah,
Everything's real quiet. And it's just the sun hasn't really come up yet, and the birds are chirping. It's quiet. I've got coffee and my dog.
Yeah, that's probably right around like 6:30. Mine lately has been like 5:30 a.m. to like 7.
Oh, wow.
Is when right before my daughter wakes
super
up.
early.
That's before my daughter wakes up. I have had to make a conscious decision to wake up this early. This isn't my normal shtick. This is just like
That's your time. That's your hour.
Right.
You have to have it. I did 6:30 to 8 this morning. I was writing. And I had my coffee and a piece of chocolate cake.
Ooh.
Lovely. I love those type of breakfast.
We hang up, I'm going to crash. All the sugar. I'm just going to be like falling asleep in front of my computer.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's important that we all have that we all have I always think it's too, I always have to I'm going to look up my birth certificate because I feel like that is also maybe the time you were born is also kind of like your prime time. Because I feel myself kind of in that morning all the time.
I was born at like 11 p.m. and I'm always asleep by 11 p.m. Like you could, literally like
that
years,
theory doesn't really make sense
like years before, before my daughter was born and everything, that was like, you could set a clock by me, like 11 o'clock.
Hilarious.
I'm done.
So you were a sleepy baby. You were born very sleepy.
Yeah. I guess so.
But yeah, I just love that twilight hour, like you mentioned too, Marcella. Just that anytime that's just like the world is it's either settling down or just waking up. I find that's a pretty magical time. I'm not a late night person. I'm sleepy by 10. Like I'm just like, oh, done. Yeah.
Well, who is someone in your life that encourages you?
Oh man. I feel like this conversation could turn really sad because I was going to answer really honestly, and I was like, "Yeah, no, we want to make this like a pod, like because I'm like, oh, I wish I had more encouragement from my family." But that's a step. We'll make that up. We'll make that a mental podcast.
Yeah, that's a whole other one. I've got a whole other podcast if you want to go on that one. We can spend an hour talking about that.
Well, it's funny, like being an artist, I really feel like we get encouragement from really like outside of, we get encouragement from ourselves, but also from just outside people. I mean, I do a lot of theater and not now, obviously, because of COVID, but that really keeps me going because it's just how I express myself. And then it's how I get back from people that will say, that really meant something to me. I would love to see that again. So as far as like creatively, I do get that from just people that I meet, and like even people like yourselves that are so gracious and want to spend time to hear about my life. But I have some really awesome friends too. I don't want to sell them short, that support me and are always just so cool about, you keep going, Dagney, we love you.
No.
Yeah. We all need at least one person, right?
Yeah.
In our life. And if we don't have that, we have to find it for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that's really important too, together.
Now, are you a board gamer, being a friend groups, or a video gamer?
Oh man, I'm definitely not a video gamer. I mean, I could barely figure out how to use Skype, so clearly I'm not a technical person. I would say I'm a board gamer. Although I don't play very often, but I definitely am more like an old school, board gamer.
All right, cool.
And that's one of the things I miss is getting together and playing board games.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, and finally, what is your favorite form of media to work in? Television, movies, commercials, photography, or theater?
Okay, so if I want to make money, commercials. If I want to be fulfilled, theater.
Okay. So because commercials are easy, quick day. It's just in and out. But do you make money on how many times the commercial plays? How does that really?
It's a tricky world, and it's a lot different than it used to be. So maybe 5 or 10 years ago, you could do maybe 1 commercial and 2 commercials and get health insurance, make a living. And they are easier days. They're usually just one day, probably like maybe a 8 to 10 hour day, relatively easy. They have really good food on commercials, I will say, like the best food you'll ever have.
Really?
Because they're catering to clients as well. They're catering to advertising clients. So their budgets are very big, where you'll do a TV show, and even if it's somewhat successful, the craft service is like, oh, there's wheat bread and peanut butter and jelly and Alfredo. Like, it's not super high end.
Right.
I'm always in it for the food. I'm like, where is the food? I need to put my food on. Commercials are great in that way, where you almost feel like it's a reward for all the work that you do trying to get jobs. When you do a commercial, you're like, this is such a nice life. Like, people walk around with cookies. Oh, would you like a warm chocolate chip cookie? Like, thank you.
I sure would.
Like a nacho. Thank you. Like it's like you can't even believe it. You're like, this is crazy. It's not so much like that anymore as far as making a living at it, because obviously advertising has changed so much going online, and then things don't play as often because products and everything changes fast now. But that's used to how you used to be, where you could do one, and then yes, you get a day rate, which it's not an enormous amount, but it's when it plays over and over, you get, a percentage of that. And I don't know how they figured that out, but it's based on time it airs and what network it airs. So if it's, playing during prime time, it's going to get a little bit more than if it's playing, on A&E at 2 p.m. But they're fun, but for me, theater is what I grew up doing. And I think if you ask all actors, in fact, James and I did a play together. Oh, that's how we know each other. Yeah. We didn't work together in Buffy, but we did a play together about, I think it was about 10 years ago.
Oh man.
And, he'll agree, and probably most actors that you talk to, they'll say that, theater's the purest form as far as acting. And it really is just about you and the words and the people across from you, where when you work in these other mediums, it's less about you and more about the other elements, especially with film and television. The editor is kind of the star.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're creating your performance for you. No, I mean, they're not, but they're pacing it.
Yeah.
Where in theater, the curtain comes up, you're responsible for editing and pacing your performance for 2 hours straight. And if it didn't go well, you have to try to fix it in the moment. And if it doesn't go well, then you're like, well, that was a crappy show. Let's try again tomorrow night.
There's no second shot.
And usually there's no score to help with the audience to manipulate the audience into what they're feeling. So that's heavy. That's a lot.
Yes, it is. And you forget that if you ever watch something maybe without music, even a show that you normally watch, and you're like, well, this is kind of boring, and then you add a music to it, and you're like, oh wow. Yeah. I mean, that's
like that. Have you ever seen the video? It was online on YouTube. You can look it up. It's from the very first Star Wars movie, the scene where they're getting their medals at the end. Mm-hmm. Someone took the music out. Because if you think about it, when that was going on in that moment, there was no band playing that grand march that they're marching to.
Yeah.
So seeing that scene with no music at all is so strange.
So strange.
And it's just, you just should look it up. It's kind of funny. But it's that same kind of, with live theater, you have that energy coming at you, right? Definitely. You can tell from the audience if it's going well or if it's not.
Exactly. They're always the truth tellers, right. Where when you're on set, you never really know if it's working.
Right.
And you rely on your director, but even, until it's all put together, that's why directors are so important in their own head. Mm-hmm. They're adjusting your performance, knowing in their mind how it's going to cut together.
Right.
But when you're acting, you kind of think about that a little bit, but not really.
Yeah.
It's different. It's just different.
Well,
and challenging as well.
Yeah. And, and as many props to anybody who can pull off a successful theatrical, acting performance, because that's just, I couldn't imagine, because my head would be too into the audience. Like, what are they getting this? Did they get this? What is this guy doing over here? He's not paying attention. I don't think he caught that last line. And,
people are sleeping. Yeah. Right? You're like, oh my God, that guy is in the front row, just full on sleeping.
It's like, sir,
how is he sleeping while someone's screaming on stage? But,
I am
it's
giving
a dark
you my
theater.
all.
Right? Yeah, what did they say? What did she say?
Yeah, oh my gosh, totally. It's hilarious where you're like, I can't hear her. And you're like, oh, should I repeat it? It depends. That's what's fun about when you have a show that you break the fourth wall and you actually get to talk to the audience, because you can totally, like, if someone says, I can't hear her, like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me say it again. Like, actually, it's so fun.
Well, Dagney, I know we originally were like, 15 minutes, but you have been such a delight to talk to.
Oh, you as well. Thank you.
We've had a really great time chatting with you. And again, thank you so much for being on the show and doing this, taking time out of your day.
My pleasure. You ladies rock.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so excited when you asked me, because I saw who you were and I was like, yes, of course I'm on board.
Well, is there anything you want to shout out or promote or anything like that? And where can folks find you, like your website and all that jazz?
I'm on Instagram, Dagney Kerr, my first and last name. And I have a Facebook page, Dagney Kerr Official. I am pretty good about responding and do manage that page myself. So when people want to ask questions or shout out anything out on that, feel free. So, because I'll get back to you.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Right. Well, great. Thank you so much.